Hello, everyone. I'm Filippo, and I'm going to tell you a bit. Usually, I talk about more technical topics, but today I'm going to tell you about how we do that technical work. So we're going to talk about a problem that you are all very familiar with. I think this is not something new, and it's that critical open source project maintenance is unsustainable. This is not the first time you hear it, and this is not the last time you're going to hear it. But fundamentally, there's open source runs the internet, and by extension, the economy. And yet, there are really two ways large critical open source projects get maintained. One of them, you can guess, is voluntarism. I'm not going to spend any minutes of this talk talking about how voluntarism is not a sustainable model for maintaining critical internet infrastructure, because yes. Right? Good. Excellent. Fantastic. That's 15 minutes of talk that I don't have to present. We're all going to go to dinner on time. Now, the second option is the one that did deliver us a lot of critical open source. That's full-time employment. And that's also how Go works. And because, for example, the Go team at Google has been taking most, even if maybe not, depending what metric you look at, most of the effort of maintaining the Go project and getting it started. And the people on the Go team are employed full-time by a single company that started the project and nurtured into what it is now. Now, what's the problem with that? You may say, well, we're all here, so Go clearly is very successful, and Google clearly did us well by employing these people and making all of this possible. We wouldn't be here. Well, there's still a problem. What do you, and this is true across every project that I've looked at or maintainers I've talked to and every company. This is really not a Go thing. This is really not a Google thing. But think about what happens when an open source project gets massively more popular. The number of users grows, it feels a niche, it finds its stride, and more companies use it. It becomes critical for large companies across different use cases. What happens? The amount of work on the maintainers goes up. Now, it doesn't grow linearly. It's not like if the number of users double, the amount of work doubles. But still, there's a significant growth in workload for maintainers as projects get bigger. What happens to the incentives of a team, and we're going to talk about abstract teams because this truly happens every time, everywhere. A team at a big company. Is that team now making more money for that company? It's not. The way that team was making money was probably internal consulting and prestige and senior retention and some customer success association, but that does not scale with the number of external users. So the effort went up, but does it make sense for that company to grow that team? Does not. These are capitalistic companies, and that's some people feel like that's unjust, that the company should just support the team in its growth. I mean, not really. The company is committing significant resources, and those are the resources make sense to commit for that company. But if the amount of work goes up and the value of that work to that company doesn't, no point in adding resources. And so what happens? Work goes up, people burn out, teams churn, teams get less effective, and I've seen that happen so many times across so many companies, across so many ecosystems, across so many projects. Now, this is not new. None of anything I've told you so far is something you haven't heard before or seen a relevant XKCD quoted in a Reddit comment about. Now, sometimes we talk about how downstream users should be more thankful and they should contribute back. And I'm going to say something very unpopular. Contributing back is not it. Actually, contributing back adds work for the maintainers. That's not to be ungrateful. It's great if you want to send a CL. But that does not make maintenance more scalable. If the project gets more successful and starts getting more contributions, they need more maintainers, not less. And at least that's true of the big projects that I've been involved in or that I've observed. There are projects that manage to set up community contributions in a different way. Great for them. A lot of them need raw maintainer effort because there's some of the work that you can't just delegate to external contributors. And then all the conversations get lost around, oh, companies are so entitled, they should just pay for the things they use. And, well, but devs are so entitled. Why they are giving the thing away for free? It's in the license, so why should they get paid? And, well, but the license says that it has no guarantees, so why are you waking up maintainers on Saturdays to get it? And then, you know how those conversations go. People start shouting past each other, and we've seen that over and over and over again. And so now you're shifting uncomfortably and you're thinking, oh no, are we about to have another one of those conversations? Well, I think that something has changed in the last 3 years. Time is a construct, doesn't matter. Something has changed in the past few years. And that's what changed is that companies have started to realize that the software they're using, they're not getting the guarantees they would like from. And that has bubbled up all the way to the top. There's been things that, like Log4j, which I know ends up on every slide deck about this, but that's the point. Every slide deck about this, both with friendly audiences, everybody nodded at the beginning, being like, yeah, maintainers, we should pay them. But also with audiences that are not as friendly because simply they don't know what you're talking about, but usually are the decision makers that decide who gets paid. But they are also now seeing these things on their slide decks, to the point that the White House itself has plans around supply chains, software supply chain security. That's how high it bubbled up. So my whole thesis in getting started on what I'm going to present today is that companies are not getting what they want. This is not a tragedy of the commons, which is something I always hear. Oh, yeah, nobody wants to pay for the common good and because they could get it for free, and everybody's happy to get the thing for free and screw the maintainers, and that's fine. I don't think that's what's happening. Companies would like to get more out of their open source dependencies, the critical ones at least. They are worried about what happens if that goes unmaintained. And I just spent 15 engineer years on getting my stack migrated to that. What happens if there's a particularly hard issue and I can't figure it out? What happens if the project takes a direction that's not compatible with how I deploy my things? What happens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because dependencies are critical to the success of the business, but they're not vendors. They don't have relationships that they can understand in terms of who do we call when there's a security vulnerability, how do we make sure you still exist in a few years? And I think that need is a difference in potential that gives us potential energy to build something that works for both maintainers and companies and that works better than what we have now. I think that open source maintainers of critical projects need to professionalize. And this is not a particularly popular opinion, by the way, especially with the maintainers who I'm trying to get paid, because sometimes maintainers will just tell me, well, but I have a GitHub sponsors right there, and nobody's paying me for it. I'm so angry about that, and they're right. They're correctly angry. So I always try to be delicate with maintainers when I tell them, I think there is a way to get paid because they've been told there's a new way to get paid approximately every 2-3 years, and every time it's a new platform or something, and it never pans out. But I think that if we do professionalize, in the same way that lawyers are professionalized, and does anybody pay their lawyers on GitHub Actions? Their dentist has a pattern? Anybody? No? Right. So the kind of professionalizing I'm talking about is the kind that would that involves PDFs. This is possibly the least technical talk I'll ever give, because my recommendation is to open Word and click Export as PDF. That's the extent of my technical recommendations in this talk. I'm sorry. I don't have cryptocurrency micropayment scheme that will automatically, with AI, allocate the best resources based on your packages.json file. Nope. Nope. I'm talking about PDFs, W9s, W8BNs, wire coordinates, and the high-touch effort of doing sales. Nobody likes that. Now, does anybody know a dentist who got to the end of the dentistry school and said, you know, teeth, great. I have so much fun with teeth. But the whole thing about setting up a practice and paying bills and then invoicing clients, nah, you know, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to set up a Patreon. No? Right. So do you think dentists are especially skilled at PDFs and CRMs and management software? Not more than the average open source maintainer. So yeah, it's not great. I don't know if I can say swear words here, but it does suck to have to do all of that PDFs and all of that work. But I think we don't have to, but it is a way to professionalize and to deliver to companies what they want and to get for maintainers a career that actually allows them to make the same kind of money that the adjacent market for senior software engineers can offer them. Because that's a fundamental problem. A maintainer can have a life event, any life event, change of country, setting up a family, anything. And they might look at how much money they're making and say, well, but the big tech over there offers like 10 times as much. And I've already demonstrated that I can lead projects, schedule tasks, write software, so I probably can get a job there. Great, your software is now unmaintained, and now there's dozens of companies who have a problem. We want to avoid that. So we want to get maintainers paid real money. All right, so a little step back. Who am I to tell you all of this? Am I just daydreaming? Why should you listen to me? I've been the maintainer of the Go cryptography packages in the Go standard library since 2018. That was not a solo effort. I've worked with Katie Hockman, Roland Shoemaker, Daniel Neal, Nicola Morino, and many others over the years. I've done this job at Google until 2022. And then I left specifically to figure out if this model I was telling you about is doable. I said, all right, look, I've pitched it to everybody that would listen. Most of them told me, that will never work. It would be nice, though. Some of them, more on the business side, were like, yeah, hold on, we would like to pay some of our dependencies like that. Can you get, I don't know, that project that does AV to do that? And I'm like, no, I mean, that's not what I work on, but great, that's useful feedback. So I left to put my money where my mouth is, or lack of money, because at the start. I quit and I stayed on with the project. So I am still the maintainer of a maintainer. Roland Shoemaker is still at Google. We still collaborate, and I still work day to day, most of my time on open source maintenance of these projects. But how do I do that? I do that through a model that I like to call the professional maintainer model. What I do is that I have a number of clients, and with those clients, we set up recurring retainers. So this is not, oh, yeah, we'll pay you to work on that feature or this feature. These are ongoing contracts, which gives the stability and the reliability to grow and to, trust that your job will still be there next year, which is nice. They are set up so that we can cancel anytime, from both sides, so that if they're not getting what they don't like what they're getting, we have a conversation. They still don't like it, they can cancel and walk away. Build month to month. And what do they get? Because that's the hard part, right? Well, first they get to make sure that the Go cryptography standard library stays maintained by me, which I'm not the only maintainer on it, but we're already a very small team, so it would struggle more if I wasn't working on it. So that's something they want, just me working on it. Do you think that that's enough to sell contracts? No, exactly. But I start with that because it does help a bit to set the tone of, you should keep in mind that you want me to keep working on this because you don't want me to start doing something else entirely, like doing support all the time. You do want me maintaining this stuff, and this is why we're talking. So first we talk about ongoing maintenance. But then we talk about the things that work better through a contract and that deliver value to the company. And these are reciprocal access and access to expertise. Let's start with reciprocal access. The idea is that, say you depend on a library, and then you check the release notes every time something comes out, and if they made some changes, maybe some performance changes that really slow down your workload, what happens? You don't upgrade, right? And then you have to go to the maintainers and say, hey, so great release there, but we did not deploy that because you made that part 50% slower, and that would cost us 50% more racks. Racks are expensive. And so there's the conversation. Maybe, hopefully, they fix it in the next release. Now you're behind one release. Some of the software you want to use requires the newest release. The team is slowed down by that. Not great, right? And on the other hand, the maintainer is also not happy. The maintainer usually doesn't want to screw over a downstream user, even a not paying one. Probably that happened because the maintainer thought, and this is absolutely made up, to be clear, thought, oh yeah, I can make that slower. Nobody cares about the performance of that. What's the worst that could happen? Apologies about RSA signatures verification getting slower. Yes, I am sorry, good sir. I am sorry. But that's the point. So maintainers talking with their downstream users is useful to both the maintainers and to the company to make sure that the direction of the project makes sense. Does this mean that clients get to say, hey, you need to work on that, or hey, you can't ship that, or hey, you must merge that? No. Open source is about multi-stakeholderism. This is not about selling governance. But most of the times, we want the same things. We want large users of our libraries to be happy and for things to work. So if we have an opportunity to talk more and in a more qualified way, because maybe somebody did open an issue on the issue tracker saying, hey, that thing is slow. Do I know if it's somebody who just ran OpenSSL speed on their laptop and said, hey, why are you slower than OpenSSL? Faster is better, you should be faster. Or somebody who has 100 racks, and if it gets 10% slower, they now have 110 racks. That's different, right? One is a real-world use case, and the other one is just a random feedback from the community that you can't really qualify. So that's the reciprocal access part. And a word that I've started using recently for this is liaison. Companies often have a liaison at some other organization from which they depend. And that's the person whose job is to coordinate and make sure that there is mutual understanding. There isn't a power dynamic there, but it's still useful to companies. So that's the first half of the value that gets delivered for these clients. The other half is access to expertise. Now, maintainers are experts in their field. That's just something that's necessary to be a maintainer. I'm an expert in Go and cryptography. A maintainer of FFmpeg is surely an expert in AV and codecs and probably high-performance software on AMD 64. I'm going to guess. I'm completely guessing. The maintainer of a HTTP server is an expert in low-level details of HTTP and all the horrible ways HTTP2 can go wrong or something like that, right? So a maintainer is an expert in their field, and having access to the maintainer is valuable for companies as an advisor. Now, does this mean that you need to set up a fixed number of hours and say, oh yeah, I'll do this many tasks for you? Not really. This is about just having access for the times where you really need to escalate something. And this is something companies really want, both for general topic issues and for project issues. To the point that companies already try to fill that gap by getting some of their employees to become the experts that they would like to have. This is something big companies do. Like if a big company relies on, I'm making it up, I'm picking Rust because I don't actually know anything about how Rust works. So hopefully people would believe me when I'll say I didn't actually know that I was referring to something that might exist or not. But if a company depends a lot on Rust, they might say, okay, you know what? We're going to set up a team, 1, 2, 3 people, and we'll tell them you get really good at Rust. You start contributing back upstream so that when there's a Rust problem, we come to you and we say, hey, so how do we make that faster? Or like, we're gonna ship something like this. Do you think it's a good idea? Can you recommend a dependency for doing async something? And to that person, hopefully it's just oh yeah, sure, do that. Or, oh no, you want that? Or, hey, yes, I know that maintainer and I trust them because I've worked with them and I think that that's the right library to use. And this sort of thing. And this is extremely expensive for companies. Full-time engineers cost so much money. There's the salary, and then there's the office, and then there's all the expenses, and there's all the taxes. The fact that they're willing to set up sometimes multiple full-time engineers for this means that they do want that. But it's also risky, because say that one of these people gets embedded in the Rust project, becomes a core team member, and then moves on. For one of a million reasons, people move on from companies, which there's no hard feelings about, right? The company does not have access to that expertise anymore. That's not great, right? You spent all this money to get somebody ramped up so that you could access them when you had problems with the project, and now you're starting over. That's not great. So here's the pitch. Paying a maintainer costs less and is more reliable because you don't have to employ them full. You can be one of 5, 10, 15 companies that pays to get that kind of access. And you can ask them both about the project. You can ask them, how do I contribute to this thing? You can ask them, how do I interact with the issue tracker in a way that's better for the relevant maintainer? It doesn't have to be that the maintainer who's acting as liaison fixes all your issues. Maybe they can just look at the issue and say, oh, that got misrouted. Hold on a sec. /cc at team foo, and it looks like this is lacking a panic stack trace. You go back to the client and say, hey, you should collect it with this tool and that tool and stick it in the issue, and that will get it looked at faster. Great. 10 minutes tops of the maintainer time, maybe saved a few hours to the engineers at the company. So yeah, that's the value of access to expertise that companies do want and do need. And when you compare it to the cost of a full-time engineer, suddenly the numbers change completely. Because when you try to talk about donations, they're like, yeah, you know, we probably have $1,000 somewhere. It's good for a year, right? Because donations, they're hard to justify to your board. But when you're saying, yeah, so we could build a team of 3 engineers to become experts in this technology so that there's redundancy between them and that they can embed it in the project and become our liaison and our experts, the resident experts. Or how much did you say that contract was? Yeah, no, wait, actually that 5-figure number sounds very good compared to 3 engineers. And that's completely different conversation. Great, so this is the model, and I want to talk a bit about, what it's different from instead. That might, oh, come on. This is what I get for using experimental software for this. Great. You might, sometimes I hear, great, you invented consulting and support hours. Great shout. Yes, that exists, I know. And some open source projects thrive with it. And, you know, great for them. This is about the projects that are not managing to do that. And, you know, the Go project was not necessarily the place to start, but that's where I could start because that's what I was doing. But the core difference is that you're not selling hours. It's access. It's expertise. The closest thing is an advisor position, not a contractor. So it's not about, hey, I'm going to give you 10 hours of support every month, and then you have 10 clients, and now it's 100 hours, and now you're not doing any maintenance anymore, and that does not align incentives well. Also, I'm not saying that's something anybody does intentionally, but if you're paid for support hours when your project doesn't work, are you incentivized to make your project easier or harder to use? It's not a good incentive setup, and I'm not saying anybody is sitting in the room thinking, haha, I will make this API so undocumented that they'll all have to pay me. No, but if you're thinking, damn, I have like 3 days spare days this month. Am I going to spend them on improving documentation and making things easier to use, or am I going to try to deliver this extra feature so that I get another contracting job next month, right? Incentives. Incentives drive everything. Same for grants. Grants are even worse. Grants are about, oh yeah, I'll add that feature or I'll improve performance so much and you're gonna pay me. And who's gonna pay to maintain that feature after the grant? No one. And what is the maintainer gonna do after taking that grant and shipping that feature? Are they going to go back and improve tests or refactor things? Or are they going to add another feature to get another grant? And the companies that depend on the thing, are they going to be happy when at the end of 5 years, it's so full of features that it's a completely unmaintainable mess? No. Is it the maintainer's fault? No, those are the incentives that were set up. And finally, sometimes people tell me, well, isn't the Apache Foundation already that? No, the Apache Foundation does not pay their maintainers. End of story. That surprised me, but also they solve different problems for maintainers. So, I'm just saying that that's not a solution for the same problem. The older thing that this thing has that these don't is that it's reliable funding. You can't convince people to take a job as an open source maintainer when it means they might not know if they're making money next year, when the alternative is getting a senior engineer job down the street and actually knowing how much money they're going to get paid next year. We've all been through a round of layoffs, and there's no certainty in the world. Still different from will I get another grant and will I get fired? Those are very different things to worry about. So yeah, this is wishful thinking. By show of hands, how many people think this can work? Damn, I did that. I got good at pitching this. It used to be that everybody would just like drive me out. How many of you, however, already know what I do and that it already works? Ah, damn it. Right. So it's not a thesis anymore. I left Google last year. I did experiment with it, and holy shit, it works. These companies are the ones that pay all of my rent, and as well as the people I work with, Nicole and Matilde, and yeah, they pay me to do what I've been telling you about so far. They pay me to work on maintenance of the Go standard library, of transparency logging tooling, of mostly those two things, and what they get in exchange is access, and we get to talk, and they get to have access to expertise. And this list started as 2-3 companies, and it's taken about a year to get where we are. So far, none of them has churned. Churn is going to happen, and churn is natural, but I was fairly worried, honestly, when we started that come the first year, everybody would say, hey, great, it's been fantastic. No, we're not renewing. And that didn't happen either. They seem happy with our arrangement. And yeah, it is what's allowing me to work on the maintenance of the Go cryptography libraries full time. Great. Now, lessons learned. A lot of this was sales. Unsurprisingly, it does involve selling in the very, put on a blazer way. You don't actually have to put on a blazer, but you actually have to take meetings and figure out what the key stakeholders are. And turns out CRM is not just a buzzword. And anyway, however, the flow of a sale for me usually looks like starting to talk with engineers. Because engineers, like the people in this room, usually hear the pitch and start nodding. Because they're like, yeah, okay, I would like that from the software I use. I would like to have you on board and be able to talk to you and ping you for issues like that, and that would be very reassuring. The word I hear so many times is reassuring. And so that's a great start. But that does not close a sale. However, they can become a champion internally, and they can they connect you to the people who do have the budget, the VPs, the directors, and so on. And you get on a call, and you tell them why they should pay you, and you send them, guess what? A PDF, exactly. You send them a PDF so that then you can send them a PDF so that then you can send them a PDF every month. That's it. The first PDF is, of course, a prospectus. Then the second PDF is a quote. And then you can both sign a PDF, which is a contract. And then you can send them a PDF every month, which is an invoice. It's PDFs all the way down. I should have titled this talk Maintenance and PDFs. But it takes time, but in my experience, not forever. Some of the closings started taking forever, and they're the ones that are not really sure that there's value in it for them, and those are probably not going to happen, which is okay. It was really important for me to only close clients that are definitely going to get something out of it, because it would be pretty bad for even just the model to, say, lose all the clients after the first renewal, right? Next, most companies want the whole packet. I've tried to slice it down. I tried to say, well, you know, if you don't need all the advisor part, but just the talking about the project, we can cut it down. I have sold precisely 0 of those middle grounds. There are some companies that want like the minimum tier just to get their logo on, and you know that's probably something I should think about later in terms of maybe making a package that's only marketing, because some companies are interested in the marketing thing, but they don't really get the value out of the engineering part to pay you all that money. But all the other companies were like, yeah, let's keep talking about how this would work and how we would set it up and the contract terms, and nobody was like, oh, that's too much money though. Can we like remove some things to make it cost less? Because it costs so much money to move the whole machine of getting things signed that the number is really usually not that important when you compare it to a full-time engineer. You're not asking for as much money as a full-time engineer, and so the money usually turned out not to be the problem. The closest thing to explain it has been advisor. That word helped a bunch, to the point that sometimes we signed contracts that were advisor agreement at the top because that made the lawyers happy. And another thing that we learned over the past year is that setting up a Slack channel has been by far the most effective way to communicate. That was important because turns out one of the hardest things has been keeping clients engaged and making sure that they were getting what they wanted out of it. I did not expect this. I started with fewer clients because I said, well, what happens if they just ping me all the time and they ask me to review all of their CLs, all of their PRs, and they try to make me join all of their meetings, and I'm all completely out of time, and I need to start small. And then I found out that my problem actually was that sometimes clients forget that they have hired you. And that's not great, because then, you know, sometimes someone will say, so why do we pay you again? And you don't want that conversation. Turns out it took some effort to make sure that the clients know how and when to access. And I've been working more to encourage more questions than I've worked to suggest asking fewer questions. Actually, that latter has never happened. Finally, it's a multi-stakeholder job. That means that you have to set expectations with clients that you're not going to merge all the features, redirect all the effort to the things they need, because you still have a community of users. And a project does not get successful by focusing only on the needs of a subset of them. And that's, I think, something that's important at the level of what does it mean professional to do this. Okay, so let's get to talking a bit about why am I telling you all this? Is this just a giant 40-minute brag? Or am I actually trying to sell you and you'll find the doors locked until you give me the contact of the decision maker at your employers? Neither. This is about growing this. Because to be completely honest, I was making enough money at Google. I was fine. Google was not going to, Google was not going to grow maybe the team as much as we would have wanted, but it was supporting the team, and it is still supporting the team. So the point of doing this was proving that this is a model that can work so that others can do it. Now, the first step, the first easiest way for me to do that is hiring others so that they can do that. And I've started doing that. I've hired Nicola to work on Xcrypto SSH because that package had been unmaintained for years. And I guessed that there would be clients who would be interested in both that getting better maintenance and in being able to talk with the maintainer. And so I hired him, got him started. He started doing fantastic work on the package, and that allowed me to go to some of the clients, including some of the ones that are already on that slide, and saying, hey, so we're getting more maintenance for that. Would you like that to continue being the case? Because we're trying to fund that effort. And also, would you like both me and Nicola to join your Slack and be able to ask us questions? And that worked. And that's one way to grow this. But I'm actually more interested in the other way to grow this, which is the one that doesn't make me any money at all. And that's growing it horizontally. I want to make this a thing that others can do in a more decentralized way. When you need a lawyer, do you go to Lawyer LLC, where all the lawyers are employed, and ask them for a lawyer? I mean, PwC, sort of. But no, there are large and small firms, and that's how professionals organize. There are the ones that focus on a niche thing, the ones that work on a bigger thing. And I want open source maintainers to grow like that, which is also how security consulting started. It started as a few small firms that then got bigger, that then spawned off other ones. And I want that to be the case for open source maintenance. Now, am I here telling you quit your job and go and do this? No. I'm here to acknowledge that I was able to do this because I have a very public profile. People would recognize my name, and that would get me the first meeting. And then they would kind of want to work with me, and so they would be like, what do you mean you need to strike the IP clause from the contract? Sure, all right, we'll talk with legal. All of those are significant hurdles. I think we can lower the bar to accessing this kind of work significantly the more we do it and the more we talk about it. First, because it means the pitch doesn't have to be, hey, so here's a whole new idea for how to do open source maintenance, and by the way, you should hire me for it. Those are two pitches. If a company has already heard the first part, then you're just convincing them, hey, I maintain that project, and that project is critical to you, and as you know, it's nice if you sign one of these retainers with its maintainer. If we normalize it, we can make it easier and easier and easier a little bit of, each time. And then it's a matter of building tools. Legal tools, like contracts and forms that you can use, training, certifications, maybe even, all the way down to professional associations, which are also good ways to get health insurance in the US, because that's a real problem to starting your own business in the US. So all of these things are things I want to build, and I think the next step is finding the next cohort of maintainers. The next cohort will have to be probably in some other field or some other project where it doesn't make sense for me to do it, but where maybe they have enough of a network to bootstrap this in their network. And when they do it, we will produce the tools and the awareness and the training to then make it a little easier for the next cohort, and then maybe a little easier, and then maybe a little easier. And I'm hoping that that just keeps rippling and keeps replicating, and it becomes one way for maintainers to get paid. Because as an aside, this is not the only way. This only works for critical projects, for example. If a company can just think, you know, I can always just replace your thing with like a week of work. This is not going to work. Maybe some of the micropayment systems will work. Maybe some of the government-mediated things will work, and I'm all for that. I am so happy that there are so many different ways that are being tested to try to get maintainers paid. I think that this one is one that can work for large projects that become critical to companies. But you know that there's a lot of those. think about your company. Think about how many things, if they went unmaintained, it would take engineer months or engineer years to replace, to migrate off, or even you would have to take over maintenance as a company of it because it's just not sustainable to have that piece of software maintained. I think for those, this model can work. Now, I am also focusing on maintenance. This is not about rewarding contributions. It's about employing and funding those people who do the grunt work every day of deciding direction, of merging CLs, of closing issues, of gardening, all of refactoring, of writing tests. And that's it, really. It's about getting a maintainer, that job, to be a proper profession, one with a career path, one where you can start junior and learn the job and don't have even to just fall into a popular project, because that's part of the problem. What's the on-ramp to being a maintainer? You need to get lucky. You start a thing and it becomes popular and great, you're a maintainer now. Is that lucky? Is that unlucky? We've read 100 blog posts about how actually that was unlucky because then it ate all of their mental health. Great. I would like that to not be the case, but also to be possible to just decide, you know what? I'm good at juggling things, and I'm good at talking to communities, and I'm also good at software. So that's what I'm going to do as my job. I'm going to start junior. I'm going to join a smaller firm of maintainers, and then maybe I'll graduate up and into my own projects. So yeah, you know, a real job, a career path. Wearing a blazer. Great. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Hey. Can you hear me? Okay. Sasa?
Hi, nice talk. I'm just a little bit curious. I don't know if I understood properly all the interaction that you have with the companies that you paid for you, but I'm just curious. There is some critical aspects of your model that can make the company that pay you in conflict each other.
It's a good question. So I think I was hinting at it when I was talking about the multi-stakeholderism aspect of it. I'm assuming you don't mean in conflict as in they work in the same field and they're competitors, because that's usually resolved by the fact that they both want the project to thrive and to work. They will, try to compete in the market, but that's not, they're not going to try it. But what if one company wants one feature and the other company wants a different feature? What if one company wants one feature and the other company specifically wants simplicity, for example? It's hard. Capital H hard. But here's the thing. I think maintainers already do this. It's already a big part of the job of maintainer to balance the necessities of different stakeholders and to explain to stakeholders why you're doing something or you're not doing something. How to say no is something that you really have to learn to maintain a large project. And one of the most useful things I've done on the Go cryptography standard library has been writing down the cryptography principles, which is just a list that says that we want things to be secure, safe, practical, and modern in that order. Simple, right? Kind of a no-brainer. Well, the fact that they're set in that order allows me to say, well, that would make it faster, but faster is not on any of these. But if you can't use it for your workload, then it's not practical. So we will try to do it unless it makes it less safe, because it's important to us that it's safe before it's practical. And it's important to communicate those because it sets expectations. If my clients didn't like how I maintain the Go cryptography standard libraries, they would probably not pay me. And that would either be for the best, because maybe we're just not the right project for them, or maybe that there are more clients that do want me to do it like that. Or maybe it is an important signal that my priorities are wrong. If there's nobody who wants to pay you to do prioritization like you're doing it, maybe you're doing it wrong. That's entirely possible. Open source projects are already a place where competing interests have to merge. And it's already part of the job to communicate, set expectations, and make sure that you can merge and manage the different expectations. And also, cancellation terms are always in there. which I think is really important, not locking in any of these contracts. They're about, we're happy, you're happy. As long as we're all happy, we go on with this. And it's why you didn't see 2 logos on that page, but you saw 8? Great, I lost count. This is fantastic. Sorry. But if one churns, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's a bigger problem when you're employed by a single company, because then it becomes a much harder conversation when you're getting people escalating to your boss that we really need to ship that, and your engineer is saying no, and you should really override that. You can have a great boss who can then do all of that work and say, no, but we have these principles and this is how we apply them. But that's spicier than a client of 8 saying the same thing. But excellent question. It is.
You mentioned that you want this to be more of a well-known relationship with downstreams, but I feel like the marketing here, I'm not saying it should be better, but like if you want others to be able to just say, oh, I want to do what Filippo is doing, but for this other project, but I want to say something other than what Filippo is doing. So what do you call this? I
don't know. Help. I have churned through so many ways to say this in short, and advisor is kind of the closest. I think you said upstream advisor earlier. Is that right? I do like that. It still doesn't capture all of it, but it is better than what I've been using so far. If anybody has just a good name for this, please. Yeah. Naming is hard, and it's a hard part of the job too, so hey. But yes, I do not know exactly how to call this. Professional maintainers? That's how I've been calling it. Not very specific. In the back. I think before there was.
So perhaps this is not specific to your specific model of doing it, but what do you think about loneliness in working on projects where you are not part of a big team at a company?
Yes. So leaving Google coincided for me with starting to work remotely, mostly for pandemic reasons and for Rome is pretty reasons. But it is a significant hurdle. However, open source projects are big teams. And I still talk all the time with Roland Shoemaker. I talk all the time with Russ Cox. And now that Nico is on board, we work together. And it is intrinsic in open source projects to have many maintainers.
Do you live in the same time zone as them?
No, but the joke has always been that I live on Filippo Standard Time, which is approximately Eastern Time.
Okay.
These are real complexities and issues of it. I'll argue that they're the same complexities of any distributed team, and I don't think I have particularly unique insight on them. That many companies have grappled with how to do distributed work, and I think all of that applies here.
Yeah, because I'm a maintainer of an open source library that has enough GitHub sponsors that I could do that. But I don't know. I think this is a big part of why I don't.
Yep, having an office with people in it, yes. I do like, and this is far down the line. This is not, the next iteration of this model, but I do like thinking about firms because they do solve a bit of that. I like thinking about maintainers that are all working in the same general area of, for example, Go. And I'm not talking about just Go, the upstream Go project, go.dev. I'm talking about Kubernetes and Docker, and I'm not saying that they need that, or I know nothing about how Kubernetes and Docker are maintained, but to say other large critical projects that are probably shared as a stack by the same clients. I like to think about those organizing in firms, because then you're not talking about 2, 3, 4 people, you're talking about maybe 20, 30, and then you can talk about, hey, we should have an office in Europe and an office in the US for people who do want to work in an office, and the ones that don't can work remotely. And I like it developing as firms, professional firms, in the same way that lawyers are organized in firms. But honestly, probably for some of the same reasons. I never had a lawyer explicitly tell me that, but some lawyers just set up a boutique where it's clearly their apartment with a nice Zoom background, and they're just very good at the thing they do. And so you talk to them when you have that one specific problem. And some of them instead are in firms where there's the one that's good at that thing and the one that's good at that thing. And
thank you for a great talk.
thank you.
As for all the doubters, I work at a medium-sized company that has exactly this business model. It works, trust me.
Great.
It's wonderful to see that you made this transition. My question is, how do you weigh requests from community versus your sponsors or subscribers, whatever you call them?
It depends what kind of requests. So if they're informational requests, like a client is asking, hey, what's the best library to do that? Or hey, should we use that for that? I do prioritize those. And Matilda here keeps me honest and sees those coming and goes like, you have not responded to that client yet. And then I go and respond to the client. And those are prioritized. But that's for informational requests. When the requests instead are, hey, can you improve that? Or even bigger, can you add that feature? Or it would be nice to have a package that does that in the standard library. Or we want an API to do that. For those, instead, we help them give that proposal the best shot at success. So it means doing extra work that maybe I wouldn't have done in terms of helping polishing the proposal and helping posting it to the issue tracker and discussing it and maybe even think a bit more about what that would entail. But then the final prioritization step is on par with community requests, partially because I'm not the sole decision maker. I can unilaterally decide what I work on. But even for that, I try to apply the same balance and measure of the success of the project, partially because if the project is not successful long term, I won't have any clients long term. So even if they're happy short term, that does not work long term. But also for things like proposal and APIs and packages, I just go to the proposal committee just like everybody else, and then they look at it. And for the record, that also helps with saying no. Because of course it's not great telling a client no. You can explain this is why it's not really compatible with how we do things, et cetera, et cetera. But then it's nicer when it's then the committee that says nope, and you have to say, well, yeah, that was a long shot. We tried our best. Here's the next best solution for your problem. It's a lot of social work, but I'll argue that again, it is work that maintainers of open source projects have been doing anyway, because we have to worry about the louder ones and the less loud ones. And it's important to not prioritize the ones that are just louder and that just come to your Discord and shout at you, right? Likewise, it's important to take a step back and think what's best for the project, but whether money is involved or not. Of course, easier said than done, but I think that it's actually easier when, as I was saying, there's 8, 10, 15 clients as opposed to your employer that has priorities. Any more questions? Going once, going twice. Great. If you look under your chair, you'll find my email address so that you can send it to the decision makers on your team. Not really.
Okay. Thank you a lot. Thank you, Filippo. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay.